Yes, brown butter in chocolate chip cookies is actually overrated, at least for me, but that doesn't mean that this recipe isn't. At the end of the day, these are really good cookies, whether you use brown butter or not. Here is 345 grams of unsalted butter. You can use salted, but you'll need to reduce the amount of salt in the final recipe. Cutting is not necessary because we're going to melt this. Into a big pan they go, and you really need a big pan for this because this is going to boil and expand once all the water has evaporated. So if you don't want to make a mess in your kitchen, use a big pan, please. In order to make brown butter, you have to let it boil until there is no visible bubbling. That's when all the milk solid starts to brown thanks to the Maillard reaction. Maillard reaction? Something like that. And the smell is, well, it reminds me to a movie theater. Once the butter starts to foam and it gets a different color, a little darker, I'm going to turn the heat off and let this cool for a moment. Meanwhile, grab a scale with a bowl and measure 600 grams of flour. And this is bread flour, which apparently should make my cookies more chewy. But I tested this recipe with all purpose, and I don't really know if I can tell the difference between those two types of flour, so use what you have in your pantry, and probably even cake flour would work, but I didn't try it. There's 1 tablespoon plus 1 teaspoon of salt, and if you use salted butter, only add 2 teaspoons, half a teaspoon of baking powder, and 3/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda. Then grab a whisk and mix to combine. Now my butter is cool enough so I can pour 52 grams of water. This is 15% of its total mass, and that way I'm going to compensate evaporation. Into the bowl of a stand mixer it goes, along with 400 grams of sugar, plus about 3 to 4 tablespoons of molasses, and this is the brown sugar part. Mix just to combine, then add another 300 grams of plain white sugar and beat it up at medium speed until it gets a little lighter in color. You can do this with a hand mixer, by the way. A mixture of 3 eggs and 3 egg yolks goes in, a splash of vanilla, and mix until homogeneous. And now it's time for the flour. You can dose it to the mixer a spoonful at a time or just plop it in. I'm dosing it. You know it's ready when you can touch the dough but it's not very sticky. Once all gets incorporated, it's time for the best part. Chocolate. 250 grams of milk chocolate chips and 200 grams of bittersweet chopped chocolate. Throw them in the mixer and just stir to combine. That's looking pretty. As you can see, this is really soft. So the first thing you want to do before baking is chill this dough for at least 2 hours. Overnight is best, so that's what I'm going to do. Into the fridge and good night. Here's after 18 hours. Now it's chilled, it's more firm and ready to bake. Grab a baking tray and line it up with parchment paper. Now for the dough, you can use an ice cream scoop. I broke mine, so that's why I'm using a normal spoon for dosing and my hands were rolling into little balls. Put them in the tray and bake at 350 Fahrenheit, about 180 C for about 15 minutes. They should come out like this. Really good, buttery, crispy on the outside and gooey when hot on the inside and chewy when cold. Just appreciate them for a second. Now, these were really amazing, but I'm pretty sure if I had used melted butter instead of the brown variation, I wouldn't know this much difference because of all the other components. And that is because I've been working on this recipe for more than 2 years now, even before the pandemic, so after hundreds of tests, I can say that, at least for me, brown butter does not improve cookie recipes that much. But feel free to try this one, whether you are in the BB Legion or not.